All right, so today we are going to do like a deep dive into this excerpt called Why Sex Matters for Everyone.
Okay, yeah.
And I think this is going to be super interesting because I think uh, we all kind of like have some preconceived notions about this whole topic.
Right.
And it's something that isn't always talked about very openly.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important. And I think this excerpt does a really good job of kind of like bringing to light all the different like facets of like why sex matters for, well, for everyone.
It's a really fascinating topic, and it really, this excerpt really kind of sheds some light on all these different aspects of sex
Yeah.
and how it affects us, not just physically, but also emotionally and even societally.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think we should just like jump right into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The excerpt starts off by talking about like the biological imperative of sex.
Right.
And this is like, on the surface, it's pretty obvious. Like sex is necessary for, procreation, to like continue the human race.
Yeah, the very survival of the species kind of hinges on this act.
Exactly.
And so it's interesting to think about that, like, that's like the core reason for sex.
Right. But it goes deeper than that.
It does. It does. And that's what's really cool about this excerpt, is that it kind of gets into all these other really interesting aspects of sex and how it affects us.
Yeah, it talks about how regular consensual sex can actually like improve your health.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like your physical health.
Yeah.
Things like, improving your cardiovascular health.
Mm-hmm.
It can strengthen your immune system. It can help with hormonal balance.
Yeah. And all of this ties into, the listener's well-being too, because it's really talking about how these acts can actually lead to a healthier and a happier life.
Yeah. And I think like what's interesting is that it's not just about like burning calories.
It's more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about like the hormones that get released.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like oxytocin and endorphins.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And like how those play into, the benefits of sex.
These hormones are so crucial to the whole experience of sex, and the really cool thing is they impact both the physical and the emotional aspects.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got oxytocin, which is often called the the love hormone.
Yeah.
And it's released during intimate contact, and this includes sex, of course. And what it does is it really helps with pair bonding, fostering those feelings of connection and trust between partners.
Right. So it's not just in our heads when we say that. Like
Exactly.
we feel closer to someone after sex.
It's a real chemical thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And then you've got endorphins, and these are, our natural mood boosters.
Mm-hmm.
They contribute to those feelings of euphoria, they reduce stress. So it's like a double whammy of good stuff happening in your brain.
Yeah.
When you engage in sex.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really fascinating how all of this is like, backed by science.
Yeah.
And it's not, like you were saying, it's not just the physical benefits, but it's also the emotional benefits.
Right. And this is where that idea of sex as a language of love really comes into play.
Yeah, I love that the excerpt uses that phrasing because I think it's so true. It's like it's a way of communicating.
It is. It's this form of nonverbal communication that can really deepen intimacy in ways that words just sometimes you can't put it into words. Through touch, through this shared vulnerability, through pleasure. Partners are expressing desire, they're expressing affection, they're expressing commitment.
Right.
And that's something that's really powerful.
Yeah, and it's not just about expressing existing feelings, right?
Yeah.
It's also about like self-discovery. The excerpt talks about how sex can help individuals explore their identities, their preferences, their boundaries.
Yeah, that's such a key point because, sexuality is a journey. It's a journey of self-exploration, and by engaging in these experiences that are, of course, consensual and safe,
Right.
Individuals learn what feels good to them, what doesn't feel good, what their personal boundaries are, and this process can be incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
It can lead to, this increased self-awareness, more confidence, greater self-esteem.
Right. And then, the excerpt kind of takes it to this next level and starts talking about how, all
Yeah.
of this is,
It broadens the
yeah,
scope.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, how
Yeah.
all of this like connects to the broader like societal landscape.
Yeah.
Like how our perceptions of sex influence our laws, our traditions, our social norms.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about how deeply ingrained sex is in the cultural fabric of societies.
Mm,
And it really does influence, everything from the laws that we have to the traditions we follow to the social norms that kind of dictate how we behave in our relationships.
right. And those frameworks vary so much across different cultures.
They do, yeah. It's fascinating how what's considered acceptable in one culture could be completely taboo in another.
Right.
And this really shapes how we as individuals perceive sexuality and relationships.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes you realize like how much cultural norms can both like liberate
Mm-hmm.
and oppress.
Yeah.
It's like it really shapes how we view ourselves
Mm.
and how we view our relationships with others.
Absolutely. And that's why I think this excerpt really advocates for having those open and respectful conversations about sex.
Yes.
Because when we break down those barriers of silence and shame, then we can start to create this space for understanding, for empathy, for positive change.
Yeah. And I think that's where like comprehensive sex education comes in.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the excerpt really emphasizes how important that is.
It is. It's key. It's
Yeah.
not just about the birds and the bees.
Right.
It's about giving people the tools, the knowledge, the empowerment to make informed choices.
Hmm.
And when people have access to accurate, unbiased information about sex,
Yes.
they're better equipped to navigate, all the complexities that come with sex and relationships.
Yeah.
And that can lead to healthier outcomes, not just for themselves, but for their communities as well.
Yeah. Like, being able to make informed decisions about contraception, about consent, about, understanding the importance of respecting their own boundaries and
Exactly.
respecting other people's boundaries.
Yeah, all of that is so crucial. And it really comes down to having that solid foundation of knowledge, so that people can make those good choices.
Yeah. But I mean, I think we have to acknowledge that there are still so many misconceptions
Oh, there are.
and stigmas
Yeah,
surrounding sex.
sadly, yes.
And the excerpt doesn't shy away from that.
It does it.
Like it really acknowledges that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it talks about the very real challenges that we face, with societal pressures and the often unrealistic portrayals that we see of sex in the media.
Hmm.
And these factors can really lead to unhealthy expectations. They can lead to performance anxiety. They can even lead to body image issues.
Yeah, it's like we're constantly bombarded with images that don't reflect the diverse reality of human sexuality.
Mhm.
And so it's no wonder that, people feel this pressure to conform to these standards that are just like completely unrealistic.
Right, and I think the key here is to start normalizing the conversations around sex,
Yeah.
to treat it as a natural and valuable part of life,
Yeah.
and not something that we have to whisper about in hushed tones or be ashamed of.
Right.
We need to create those safe spaces for open dialogue where people can ask questions, where they can share their experiences, where they can challenge those harmful stereotypes.
Yeah. And I think it's about moving beyond, that like simplistic birds and the bees talk
Right.
towards a more nuanced
Exactly.
understanding of sex and its impact on all of our lives.
Yeah, and it's also about remembering that sex isn't the sole measure of someone's worth
Mm.
or the strength of a relationship. It's one piece of a much larger and very complex puzzle.
Right. And ultimately, like the excerpt reminds us that sex matters for everyone,
Yeah,
regardless of your age, your gender, your orientation.
absolutely.
It's about so much more than just the physical act.
Yeah, it impacts our physical well-being, our emotional well-being. It shapes our relationships. It influences, the very fabric of our society.
Mm.
And so by embracing this healthy understanding of sex, one that's free from shame, that's free from misinformation, we can start to create a more equitable and a more compassionate world for everyone.
Yeah.
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 So, wow. I think that was a really, really insightful deep dive.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I definitely learned a lot.
Me too. Yeah. It's always good to kind of revisit these topics and really think critically about our own assumptions
Mhm.
and how we can be better advocates for healthy sexuality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so as you're listening to this and kind of like reflecting on everything we've talked about,
Hmm.
I want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
How can we as individuals contribute to creating a more open and informed dialogue
Mhm.
about sex within our own communities?
Yeah.
That's something to think about.
It is.
All right, well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
I'll catch you next time.
See